Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting. Before we start the council meeting, we'll be having a public forum and we have one speaker in the public forum. But before we start those proceedings, I'd like to welcome that speaker, but also advise that this public forum is being audio recorded for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this public forum that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Obviously, accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of the public forum. And the public forum is being conducted under the Section 4 of the Code of Meeting Practice for councillor, staff and delegations. And the speaker will have 5 minutes. And then we will have questions if required. So the speaker in question is Mr. Andrew Boyd Barber, and he's on the screen. Andrew, you have our attention. Probably not. We haven't turned you on.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
There you go. Thanks.
Excellent.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Cultural Precinct Master Plan. I want the precinct to be great, not just good or mediocre, but great. And now is the opportunity to take time to get it right, to be bold and ambitious and long-term. In my opinion, additional work is needed on the master plan before it can be finalised. The precinct is important to me because I had saxophone lessons at the Conservatorium. I performed on stage at the theatre and I sought comfort in the youth cafe as a pimply teenager who didn't quite fit in with the cool kids. Professionally, I am an urban designer. I have worked on master plans and public space projects. I study why public space fails and why it works. In my initial submission, I described the current precinct as mediocre. This considered opinion is formed from a combination of lived experience and technical knowledge. My strong critique tonight is because I want Albury-Wodonga to be the best regional city in Australia. Firstly, there are some really good elements to the proposed master plan. The key moves diagram and urban design framework set out a central square that's square in shape with surrounding facilities. And this is a good approach. New links, more entrances and active edges will help improve the public realm. The landscape design of the central square is stunning. Removing the existing central axis is a genius move, and putting avenues at the edges removes the divider and helps to frame the square and allows for future developments to seamlessly slot in. However, the master plan is lacking when it comes to the built form, the buildings. There is minimal critique or guidance on how the existing buildings could be enhanced, moved, expanded or replaced, or how new buildings would work alongside. There is no inclusion of built form standards, no height minimums or maximums, setbacks or shadow studies. There is lacking guidance on appropriate uses. For example, there is no guidance if residential towers in the precinct are encouraged or prohibited. These are important things to get right in master plans, as good public spaces, good squares, are primarily shaped by the buildings surrounding it, not just the landscape within. And this master plan is at risk of spending lots of money on a square that may not succeed because the buildings at its edges are lacking. There are still many big questions unanswered. Should the convention centre be in the same spot? What happens to the theatre building at the end of its life? How do the museum, library, mama and other facilities expand over time? And what happens to the police and courts? There are also many smaller issues that have not been addressed by the master plan. Things I raised in my initial submission, like the ugly mama loading dock, the many blank walls, the entrance to the museum and the awkward retro lane and cafe building. Focusing on the youth cafe for a second, the layout of the retro laneway and the cafe building are not good. There are safety issues baked into the dogleg design. I raised these as issues before the building was built, but my submission back then was ignored. Removing the youth cafe building unlocks so much potential for clear and safe and legible western entrance and for expansion of the museum. I appreciate that the youth cafe provides a vital service. I know, I used it, I championed it when I was the youth mayor. But the youth cafe is about people, its programs and as a safe space for all. All of these things can happen in a building nearby. There are other aspects I could critique, but what I hope is clear is that more work is needed to ensure that the buildings around the square are thought through and cultural use is considered more comprehensively before the master plan can be finalised. Quickly, a few other points. I am concerned that concept plans for the convention centre were released before the master plan finalised. Master plan should inform buildings, not the other way around. The sustainability section is greenwash. A few solar panels and some water collection doesn't cut it these days. Where is the black water treatment, waste to energy, Green Star minimums? Whereas the transport hub, providing a decent transport hub on Dean Street, should be the front door to the cultural precinct. It should elevate bus as a viable option and form that key link between Albury and Wodonga, because for too long there's been substandard bus amenity users. I'm concerned there was no design competition, and further disappointed that only one option is being put out for public exhibition. How can people be part of a design process without being given the chance to contribute to and comment on options? I encourage the use of a design review panel to ensure that there is expert eyes who can critique this master plan and any future development that should abide by the master plan. This master plan needs more teeth so that we do not have repeats of past mistakes. In summary, I care a lot about the precinct. There are some good aspects, but more work is needed to understand how the cultural mix and buildings will shape the precinct. I want this precinct to be great, not just good or mediocre, but great. And now is an opportunity to take time to get it right, to be bold, ambitious and long-term. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. On time, as usual. Okay, questions, councillors for Andrew. Any questions? Councillor Gleichen.
Thank you. I have a question to the most relevant member of staff, if I may.
Yep.
Thank you. How critical is it? We've heard an argument that we should be dealing with the square and the buildings in one space and in one time. How critical is it that we do that? Is it possible to progress the concept and deal with the buildings as and when they may become an opportunity to do something with them?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question and for you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Dan. In regards to the buildings, there's a few components to it. One is to remember that, and I guess in context of the master plan, it's the first look at review of our CBD master plan. So there's some of the elements there that also may be applicable for the overall review of the CBD master plan, which is to follow in the coming financial year. In regards to buildings, obviously we've also still got existing controls within our development control plan, which does talk around things from our previous CBD master plan, such as interactivity with squares, activation of spaces, etc. And pardon me, should this master plan, which is to go out for exhibition as part of this, not for adoption as part of council's consideration tonight, obviously should that eventually be adopted, then those reviews, those controls will be reviewed with what's proposed in this master plan in mind and be strengthened and or changed accordingly as they need to. So I guess our opinion is that this isn't the only opportunity to be able to identify and address those issues. Should council wish those to address. Obviously what's there tonight is for this application, for this proposal to go out for public commentary.
Okay, if I can have a follow-up question, thank you. So in essence, Andrew would have us hold back on going out for public comment on the square because we haven't looked at the surrounding buildings or the buildings on the square. But there is also the issue of the master plan for the CBD that will be going out for community consultation or investigation next year. So should we therefore wait for that to happen too? At what stage should we stop everything until we have all of these plans put together, or is that not a workable future?
Thank you for the question, for you, Mr. Mayor, and obviously won't speak on Andrew's behalf and what he's seeking to achieve. I'll leave that for Andrew. But like anything, at some point, I guess you need to commence master plans, and you can either do them in wholesale bolus master plans, or you can decide to do them in relevant discrete components. So in this case, when we looked at the review of the CBD master plan, one of the key discussions and decisions the council made was to separate two components. One was to look at the cultural precinct by itself and then roll over any recommendations from that into our review of the overall master plan, rather than have it at one big project. So if that was an answer to your question, there are ways that you can break up the projects into what might be relevant chunks to be able to deal with those and then move on to the next component rather than doing it as one long on-rolling project.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor King.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Andrew, you mentioned some security and safety concerns with the youth cafe and the laneway. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
So that would be crime prevention through environmental design, or CPTED, is a kind of a very technical aspect of ensuring that public spaces are designed to try and prevent the possibility of crime happening. Typically, they would seek to ensure that there are sort of eyes on the street, or that there aren't dark corners, or that there aren't kind of incongruous access ways. So the dogleg that exists as the laneway around the youth cafe, with the mix of uses around it, would raise red flags for me.
That's right. So what's your suggestion on fixing that, given that the buildings are already there and there's other side buildings as well?
I think that's the kind of thing that a master plan should seek to redress. That a master plan has the opportunity to kind of think further down the track, where you can move buildings, you can, destroy buildings, demolish buildings, expand buildings, those sorts of things. You get the opportunity to kind of think a little bit future and ahead. So my suggestion would be that you would remove the youth cafe, relocate it somewhere else, and you start to resolve a lot of those safety issues that exist with the laneway.
So Doxy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just following a couple of questions that have already been asked, Andrew. You've spoken to Councillor King in relation to the dog leg at the Retro Youth Cafe. We spent a lot of money building that in the first place. I hate to see it pulled down just because of that issue. The second one, following on to what Councillor Glacken said, how long do we need to wait before we can progress this, if we are thinking we are going to wait for the police station, the courthouse, the other buildings to come down? They've got life in them for quite some time yet. This is a project we need to start moving on with, not waiting 5 or 10 years for. And you made a comment in relation to the AEC. Do you see that being knocked down too?
To start with the start, so yes, money would have been spent on the youth cafe at the time. I remember that quite a bit. I was one of the submitters on that, and at the time pointed out some of these issues. The building has been built, and I from recollection, it was $1 million. I think in the context of $30–40 million for the convention centre, potentially tens of millions of dollars for the public space, that there is a little bit of give in there. How long until, when do you start and stop? I would suggest that you, as a master plan, you'd package this block up as one piece. So if you're looking at the public space and the buildings around it, you'd have sort of one master plan to rule them all for this one particular block that could then plug into a wider central city master plan. Whereas at the moment, it sounds a little bit like you've got part of a master plan for the public spaces within the precinct, but not the buildings, and that the buildings might come later, and then you're dealing with sort of two overlapping master plans. So my advice would be that you draw a very clear red line boundary and make sure that everything is included within one. I suppose my point to the theatre complex would be that, or any of these buildings, some of them are getting to an age where they either need significant remedial works or moderate remedial works, or potentially works that cost just as much as a replacement building, and you should be questioning that life. And then in the context of this precinct, once you've got all that information together, you can start to make some value judgments or some calls or some phasing approaches once the knowledge is there. Thank you.
Councillor Thurley, question?
Just a couple of questions for Andrew. In the report we have, it talks about a master plan which has a lifetime of 10 to 30 years, so that things will change during this period. And if we go, for example, to the police station, courthouse and so on, the Premier has indicated that negotiations are possible on these buildings to see what we do. So do we have to decide that now, or can we say we have a plan that looks at the square, but we need to develop further concepts of the buildings both on the east, west and south so that we give the public some idea of what the possibilities are.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I think the master plan as it's drawn is actually quite interesting when it comes to the courts and the police, because the master plan has in that scenario shown some general bulk and locations of what buildings might look like with some central courtyards, which is reasonable. You know, that gives you the flexibility down the track. I suppose that same approach hasn't been taken to some of the other buildings. You know, what would it look like on the north or the east or even the south if new buildings or buildings were to change? So it's always a sort of an interesting boundary between how much existing has inertia and is not going to change, or how much will change, and how you illustrate that in a master plan. And that's, I suppose, where, you know, some of my commendations around the urban design framework work well, but then you end up with a sort of illustrative master plan that seems to make things look really permanent. I hope that helps.
Councillor Con, question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My substantive question is to Mr. Christie, but I just wanted to check my understanding of something with Mr. Barber first, if that's all right. When in your original speech, you talked about built form guidelines or standards for any renovations or future buildings that go around the square. So is it my understanding that you're not asking for us to identify necessarily what we want to be in the buildings that are there, but have some strict guidelines around setbacks or height or materials, or, you know, for example, insisting that main entrances face the square? Have I got that right?
Yes, that would be correct.
Thank you. So my substantive question to Mr. Christie, I know that we are reviewing the CBD master plan very soon. And if I recall the previous one correctly, it did have kind of different guidelines facing Dean Street to the rest of the CBD, for example. Does that have the scope to go down to a small enough scale to include this kind of really specific built form guidelines? For example, you know, one particular edge of QE2 Square, does it have capacity to go down to that scale?
Thank you for the question for you, Mr. Mayor. In short, yes. So we translated the existing CBD master plan guidelines. Some of them are street-based. They talk about different street wall heights, for example, different setbacks, upper level setbacks, depending on where they are within the CBD. And again, that's what this master plan can do. Rather than have the detail and control in the master plan, there are some broad objectives which are on page 70 of the draft master plan. And then if again, post-exhibition it gets adopted, what you'll do is you get those objectives and then translate those into actual development controls, and then start to deal with that as amendments to our development control plan at that more finite detail, rather than the master plan necessarily getting caught up in that finite detail when you're still talking about the strategies and objectives it's trying to achieve.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew, for your presentation tonight. It was very thoughtful and very thorough as is normal, and we'll take that information on board and place it in our considerations moving forward. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to tonight's council meeting for Monday, the 26th of April, 2021. We'll start with the opening prayer and acknowledgement. Thanks. If we could all stand. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision-making, protect us and the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. Amen. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today. Pay my respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition, hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. Recording and webcasting of the council meeting. This council meeting has been webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting, that you're respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations. I have a number of those. I've got another number one of those. Anyone going to be in the chamber for this particular item? Well, 13.2 is the hot item at the moment. Oh, good. And we'll just stand by for those conflict of interest declarations. I'll start with the ones I have currently. Councillor Graham Doxey, non-pecuniary, less than significant. Brief description: I am on the board of the organisation seeking a grant under discussion at this night's meeting. Council meeting Monday, the 26th of April. 13.2, the financial assistance budget. Action is he will leave the chamber whilst the motion is being discussed. The next one is Councillor Glacken, pecuniary, significant or less than significant? Yep. I act as a fundraiser ambassador for Hilltop, an organisation supported by the Fight Cancer Foundation. 13.2, financial assistance budget, leave the chamber and not participate in the vote. Okay. Councillor Con. Non-pecuniary, significant. My employer, Gateway Health, is a recommended recipient of a financial assistance grant. 13.2, financial assistance budget, leave the chamber when the agenda item is being discussed. I hope you all have a good coffee out there when you leave the chamber. Okay. Councillor Thurley, non-pecuniary, significant, member of the Joint Regional Planning Panel, and the item is 13.5, the Lauren Jackson Stadium. The action is leave the chamber, and I assume Councillor Vandervan, yours is the same. So it'll be Councillor Vandervan, non-pecuniary, significant, also a member of the Joint Regional Planning Panel, and it's the agenda item 13.5, the Lauren Jackson Stadium, and the action is to leave the chamber. So the last one is Mr. Frank Zachnich, pecuniary, CEO employment contract, documents for sealing item 12.1. Action is leave the chamber when the matter is discussed. So I think once I get that final written document, I'm happy to sign off on that. Mr. Zachnich, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This advice to the council meeting relates to disclosure of political donations and requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The Act under section 10.4 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report, detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act, section 375A, requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contribution plan under that Act, but does not include the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Zachnich. Apologies, we have none. I think everyone's accounted for. Councillor Cameron is on the screen, so we're all accounted for. Action plans, no Merrill minute. Action plans, CM 6.1 to 6.4. Thank you, Councillor Thurley.
Struggling to read the text, Mr. Mayor.
This is a bit small. Really? I think that's two font. There it is.
Thank you. Thank you. I move the following recommendation: the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress, and 4, long-term issues more than 3 months. And I do have a question.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you're going to ask your question and then open debate if you would like.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question probably is to Mr. Ferris. One of the items, once again, is about biosolids management. And clearly we have long-term ongoing issues with this matter. And I think most of them relate to PFAs, which have been detected in our. Has the EPA done any work, come to any conclusion about what levels of PFAs are going to be suitable for land spreading of this material? I'm aware as a background that another company in this area once wanted to land spread materials they had, and the EPA said the boron levels are quite high. When it was indicated that you could spread it at 100 tonnes per hectare or 1 tonne per hectare, that would solve the problem. As EPA looked at PFAs in that context.
Mr. Ferris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand that application rates are being considered as well as part of an overall management plan for PFAs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to open debate at all?
No, I think the matter is fairly straightforward.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. On the same topic, biosolids, I note in the action plan that Council will go to the market to find a suitable transport and reuse partner. Now, the original successful tender was for an on-site preparation of the biosolids rather than just trucking it out of the LGA. Would we still be looking at that also, and it's just not indicated in this action plan?
Mr. Ferris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll certainly try and keep the tender process as open as possible to allow any treatment arrangements based on obviously the consultant's findings and the potential end use of the product, but that will certainly still be available.
Thank you. Being no further question or debate, Councillor Thurley, do you wish to close debate? Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Confirmation of the minutes on the council meeting held on Monday, the 12th of April, 2021. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the following recommendation as a motion that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, 12 April 2021 at 6:19 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to Councillor Doxey?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There being no questions or debate, I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no reports from community forums. There are no notices of motion or rescission. There are no presentations, deputations, no reports from committees and working parties, documents for sealing, and Mr. Zachnich needs to leave the chamber before we open batting on this particular issue. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, through you, to move the recommendation as a motion that council authorises its seal to be affixed to the document outlined below in the presence of 2 signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005 and the council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedure. A, Chief Executive Officer's employment contract with Albury City, 11 September 2021 to 10 September 2025, extension to current employment contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second again, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you. It's an administrative matter now. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. We'll get Mr. Zachnich back. Thanks. Okay, thank you, councillors. Officer reports for consideration. 13.1, the COVID-19 crisis relief and recovery. Thank you, councillor Gleggan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you to move the recommendation as a motion. That council includes the following measures in the draft 2021-22 operational plan. The first being applies $0 per chair for the outdoor dining. Item number 2 applies $0 fee for street vending and A-frame advertising for businesses. Item number 3 waives lease license fees for community and sporting groups. And item number 4 applies 0% interest on overdue rates from the 1st of July to 31st of December 2021, the next 6-month period. And B includes a COVID hardship relief plan of $150,000 in the 2021 draft financial assistance schedule based on an eligibility criteria of conditions as follows. 1, applicable to the rating period from 1 July 31 December 21. 2, applications open to all affected residential ratepayers unable to pay amounts due to the 6-month interest-free deferral period. 3, evidence by way of a signatory declaration demonstrating a reduction of 30% of income in the 6-month period from 1 July to 31 December 21 as a direct result of the COVID-19 emergency. And 4, maximum financial assistance amount of 50% of total rates payable by affected ratepayers for the specific period. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'd like to second the motion, but I wanted to add one extra thing, and that is in the first part of the motion that Visit Albury Wodonga Destination Marketing Activation Program of $100,000.
So you're adding to
A5.
as a 5?
Yeah.
Okay. You comfortable with that, councillor Gleggan?
Yes, once I don't have to read it all out again, I'm very happy.
Okay, no problem, councillor Thurley. That's been added. In addition, I had a question from councillor Vanderman. Councillor Gleggan? No? Okay. Councillor Gleggan, do you wish to open debate on that item?
Thank you. I think this is a fantastic package. We as a community have had some ups and some downs, and we as a council have certainly had some ups and downs pertaining to COVID and the knock-on effect to our community. I think these are great opportunities for us to continue to show that we're supporting our community, but also ensuring that we can continue to undertake the works that we do actually need to do. We cannot stop still. Our city needs to continue to go forward. I think the opportunity for adding the additional 5th point in A is fantastic, because we need to make sure that our community is vibrant and a community that still attracts people to come and live here as well as come and stay here. If we can increase the volume of people coming and utilising our space, utilising the outdoor venues, etc., that is good for our community. It is also important to be able to show support and offer physical support to those members of our community who do need it. And I think this motion covers both angles. So I'd like to commend the staff for the effort that they've put into this report for us. And I would like to encourage our councillors to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Gleggan. No speakers against. Speaker for, councillor Vanderman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, for your indulgence. I just want to stress in this particular part of the tonight's proceedings that over the last 12 months, this council has been exemplary in the support that we've offered to our community in terms of dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I personally would like to put on the table my thanks to the council staff and my fellow councillors for the stuff that we've put in place to assist our community. And when we look at the latest ALGA newsletter, there's an article in it that says that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, up to 25 or 27 out of the 77 Queensland councils could be found to be non-sustainable because of the COVID-19 emergency. And I think with our financial results and our budget for this upcoming year and the measures that we're trying to put in place here, supports our community as best as we possibly can. And obviously the part of that is that Visit Albury-Wodonga Destination Marketing Activation Program, which will assist our hospitality and tourism based industries to a greater extent. So I just want to put that on the table as my thanks to the staff and the council for putting in place the measures that we have to assist our community over the last 12 months. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vandervan. Are there any further questions or speakers for or against? No, I'd just like to add my support for this particular motion, and we're amending that 0.1 to 100,000. It's not $100. Contrary to the beliefs of some across this community, there is a view that we should be offering rate cuts and zero rate increases. I think if we're going to recover from COVID-19, post-COVID-19, and our finances are going to be strong enough and rigorous enough to do that, we need to continue with the minimum increases to reflect generational growth and certainly support our community out of this particular pandemic and into the future. So many of the things we are supporting in this particular motion are as a result of the rate increases, which are only the minimum that's applied by IPART. So I support this particular motion because I think it does demonstrate consistency from last year till now. And I think, again, we've learnt a lot of the things we proposed last year. We've become a bit leaner here, but we've also applied different changes to that particular motion to reflect that. So I support the staff and the councillors for supporting this particular initiative because I think it's important we continue on the same trajectory. So Councillor Thurley, no, it's Councillor Glacken. Do you wish to speak for Councillor Thurley?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to reiterate your comments, because in the past we've had occasions where people have suggested zero rate increases, and that's not a good way to go, because a rate freeze this year carries over every year from then on. And if we increase the rate by the minimum, as you've suggested, it's an average of about $35 per property. And if we don't do that, then over the next 10 years, we take a hit of $10 million. So it's not a big rate increase, but it's essential for the ongoing finances and well-being of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to close debate on this item?
Thank you. And I thank the councillors who have spoken for this motion, in support of this motion tonight. And all of their points are absolutely valid. It is important for us to be able to assist our community, but it is likewise important that we be able to spend money within our community to encourage that knock-on effect, that accumulation of opportunities as the money passes through our community. So a number of works that we'll be discussing later tonight are opportunities for us to ensure that money is circulating within our Albury-Wodonga and regional community. And this motion that we have before us now supports that. And it is important that we follow through with a number of steps in the next motions to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.2, we have a number of councillors stepping out. Councillor Glacken, Councillor Doxsey and Councillor Con. We'll just wait for that to occur and we'll continue on with the next item. Yeah, we've still got a quorum. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, council's item 13.2, the draft 2021-22 financial assistance budget. Councillor Vandervan.
Yeah, I've got to find the right page, or I can read it from here. I might get a sore neck by the time I'm finished. I'll move the recommendation of the motion that Council A adopts the draft 2021-22 Albury City financial assistance schedule, including the following allocations as a response to requests received for the 2021-22 financial year. 1, Albury Conservation Company, $40,000, 3-year agreement, 2022-23, $40,000, and 2023-24, 40,000. Albury Wodonga Volunteer Resource Bureau Incorporated, 140,000. 3-year agreement, 2022-23, 40,000, and 2023-24, 40,000. Gateway Health, $5,000, 3-year agreement, 2022-23, 5,000, and 2023-24, 5,000. Taguna Community Centre, $38,633 to be incorporated into the existing annual service agreement. 5, Ivor Memorial Community Trust, $24,035. 6, Wodonga Urban Land Care Network, $15,823. 7, Woolshed Taguna Land Care Group, $55,665. 8, Fight Cancer Foundation, $30,000. And 9, Rotary Club of Wodonga West, $30,000. B, that financial assistance to the Rotary Club of West Wodonga is conditional on 1, confirmation of exact location and landowner approval. 2, endorsement and provision of matching financial support from Wodonga Council. 3, attainment of other fundraising and sponsorship required to fully complete the project. And 4, confirmation of broader community support for the project. And C, places the draft financial assistance schedule on public exhibition as part of Council's draft 2021-22 operational plan.
Excellent work. Councillor Thurley.
I second the motion.
Councillor Vanderman, did you wish to speak to that?
Look, as per past financial assistance grants, there's a hell of a lot of great community projects that are seeking to value add to current council infrastructure and council facilities in partnership with these organisations, and also then to offer support for things like the Fight Cancer Foundation. And the land care stuff is also important in terms of what they do to our community by value adding to these grants, to these assistance grants. So all of these items are worthy of support. And I understand that our councillors are involved with a lot of these community groups, as we can see with the people who had to step out because they had an interest in these items. So it's great that those councillors are also involved with these organisations, and they're all good projects that are very much worthy of support. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Question, Councillor King.
Just a relevant member of staff, and I'm having a few issues with my iPad here. Just in regards to Gateway Health and the financial assistance to the Rainbow Ball, Wodonga Council's contribution, are we aware that, given that Gateway Health is predominantly Albury Wodonga, is there a relevant member of staff aware of any of the amount that this organisation is asking from Wodonga?
Ms. Cade.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and let me just confirm the details. So the funding has been divided amongst a number of different organisations. It's $5,000 for Albury City Council, and I just need to get the confirmation of Wodonga. Sorry. I will need to confirm that with you. I'm sorry. I've not got access to that information at the moment.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
open the attachments.
I'm just trying to
So the question that the report reflects that they are seeking to get funding from Towong, Indigo, Wangaratta and Wodonga to support this ball. And it would appear that if that's the case, that's another 5,000. That's a pretty big ball for the year by the time they finish. But my concern, I've asked Councillor King to raise it, is that we put contingency plans on money for a peace bell, but we don't have a contingency plan here. So we're submitting to $15,000 over 3 years, which I support the cause for sure. But why is Albury the only council submitting funds for this particular and very worthy cause, as we did, which is consistent with the white ribbon ball that was raised in this very chamber last year? Ms. Cade?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So it is a 3-year agreement. So the commitment for Albury City is 5,000. The other councils are also contributing. The rural city of Rangaratta will contribute 5,000. The Wodonga City Council will contribute 3,000 in community sponsorship and donations. Vanilla Rural City 1,000, Indigo Shire 2,000. The commitment is for a 3-year period. It has about 300 young people attend. That was pre-COVID times. And last year when we distributed the monies, they were doing other things other than the ball because they couldn't due to COVID. But it does have good attendance and a number of other councils do contribute.
Okay.
Can you just clarify again what the Wodonga City Council's contribution is?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The Wodonga City Council contribution is $3,000 through their community sponsorship and donations.
Okay.
Have they expanded on that and what that means? Sponsorship, is it money or is it?
That's money.
Money, okay.
Thanks, Ms. Cade. Okay. Any other questions or debate? No? Okay. Councillor Vanderven, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. If we get the councillors back in the chamber, we can continue our meeting business. Okay, let the records reflect that Councillor Doxy, Con and Glacken have returned and we're away again. Okay, 13.3, the draft Albury City Community Fund budget. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
I'll take over from Councillor
for
Vanderbilt on this
punishment.
one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council adopts the following draft 2021-22 Albury City Community Fund budget allocations, including GST. 1, Albury Tennis Club Inc., $38,157. 2, New City Cricket Club, $32,963. Ross Circuit Preschool, $200,000 interest-free loan over 10 years. St Patrick's Tennis Club, $26,562. The Guna Community Centre, $42,851. 6, the Guna Men's Shed and Albury Women's Shed, $17,000. And 7, West Albury Preschool, $400,000. B, adopts the following draft 2022-23 Albury City Community Fund budget allocations, including GST. 1, Ross Circuit Preschool, $415,000. And 2, West Albury Preschool, $267,000. C, adopts the following draft 2023-24 Albury City Community Fund budget allocations, including GST. 1, Ross Circuit Preschool, $285,000. And D, places the draft Albury City Community Fund budget on public exhibition as part of Council's draft 2021-22 operational plan and 4-year delivery program.
Thank you. Councillor Doxy.
Very happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to open debate?
I don't wish to say too much. Clearly, once again, we're looking at some very deserving community groups that have also put up their hands and are helping themselves, as well as asking for some assistance from council. And a couple of very significant ones there. Clearly, renovations and improvements are required to a number of significant facilities in this community. And I commend the groups who've come to us and put their case and done a lot of preliminary work. They're not just putting their hand up and saying, give us some money. They've done a hell of a lot of work and in most cases are putting in their own money to achieve these ends. So this is a great result.
Thank you. Any further speakers, debates or questions? No, I'd just like to value add before we close debate that to Councillor Thurley's point that the West Albury Preschool and Ross Circuit were in this chamber and provided us with a very thorough presentation, and they do a fantastic job, and it's fantastic to see we're able to provide them with the funding over the next 3 years to do the projects that they require to do to educate our next generation. So thanks to the staff and the councillors for supporting this motion. Okay, closing debate, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, it's fine.
Okay, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Okay, 13.4. The draft Albury City 2021-22 operational plan, draft 4-year delivery program and draft long-term financial plan. Councillor Vanderman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendations. The motion that Council A adopts the draft 2021-22 operational plan, the draft 4-year delivery program and the draft long-term financial plan. B, places the draft plans on public exhibition for 28 days, concluding on Friday, the 28th of May, 2021. And C, considers any submissions received at a meeting of council to be held on Monday, the 28th of June, 2021, prior to final adoption of the plans.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to open debate?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a culmination, well, close to the culmination of a process that starts about the same time every year. It is the way that this council is going to deliver on the expectations of the community in terms of infrastructure and support over the next 12 months. There's a lot of money being spent in the community, which I think, and as Councillor Thurley alluded to earlier, will provide a great benefit to our community in terms of a lot of infrastructure projects, but there's also a lot of assistance for community groups and other parts of our community that are looking to council to be a leader in this space. So it's a lot of money that we're dealing with. We're in good financial shape, thanks to the decisions that this council has made, and I commend the motion to our fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. No further question or debate. Councillor Vanderman, did you wish to close debate?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Okay, 13.5. We'll wait for Councillor Vanderman and Councillor Thurley to vacate the chamber. Thank you. Okay, Councillor 13.5, development application 10.2021.381113.1, alterations to community facility, the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre redevelopment stage 1, 229 North Street, East Albury. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. To move through you the recommendation as a motion that Council A receives and notes the report, and B determines not to make a separate submission to the Southern Regional Planning Panel in relation to development application 10.2020.38113.1, proposing alterations and additions to community facility Lauren Jackson Sports Stadium redevelopment stage 1 at lots 8 and 9 and 10 DP 75813 at 229 North Street, Albury. And I would like to make a few comments.
Just for the purpose of record, you missed the 0758013.
Did I?
So
I do apologise. Where's that? Sorry, yes, 7588013.
Thank you.
I do apologise.
Thank you.
At 229 North Street.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Just waiting for the motion to be amended to not. Determines council not make a separate submission. Thank you very much, ladies. Okay, Councillor Glacken, just open debate.
Yes, thank you. This is a project that we have been looking at for some years now, and we've had a number of presentations on at council. I acknowledge that we have had some community feedback, a small amount of community feedback, and thank them for having done so. It's my understanding, and unless there is a councillor here that thinks otherwise, and I'm happy to hear that in discussion and debate, it's my belief that we should submit allow the application to go forward to the Southern Regional Planning Panel and allow them to make the determination. I believe the report put to us by council is very clear and provides good information that I believe that will be a benefit to us as a council through the Southern Regional Planning Panel. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Gluckman. Any further questions or debate on this item? Doesn't appear to be. Did you wish to say any further, councillor Gluckman?
No, thank you.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour, councillor Stutchbury, councillor Doxy, councillor King, councillor Mack, councillor Con, councillor Gluckman and councillor Zoom Cameron up there. Thank you very much. The motion is carried and we'll get the other councillors back into the chamber. Thanks. Welcome back, councillor Thurley and councillor Vandervan. Councillor Con, draft cultural precinct master plan 13.6.
Thanks. I move that Council A receives and endorses the draft cultural precinct master plan. B places the draft cultural precinct master plan on public exhibition for a minimum of 28 days. C, if no objections are received, that the draft cultural precinct master plan be adopted. And following the public forum, I'd like to add a part D, please, that within the scope of the CBD master plan review, we include specific built form guidelines for any modifications to existing buildings or new buildings within the cultural precinct.
You'll have to give that to the ladies. That's quite a mouthful. We'll wait for that to be. Yes, councillor Thurley.
I had forwarded an amended motion to the staff earlier today, and I wonder if it might cover the matter that councillor Con has just raised. So if we could look at that motion, it maybe cover what you
might make it a lot easier. Okay, we'll just wait for that one to pop up then. There we go. Councillor Con.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just taking a moment to consider that version.
Yep.
I've said, for example, receive a note rather than endorse. I'd rather leave the word endorse until the public has had their say, and then we endorse. And the only thing that I've added is point D, request the staff to continue work with Taylor Cullity Lethlean. We could add, or any other party, to develop scenarios for the integration of all existing buildings, including the state government buildings on the southern eastern sides, the old courthouse and post office, and the properties on the western side, namely St Matthew's Rectory and Belridge Hague. And in such a consideration, we would consider built form, heights, and so on. So I wonder if that adequately covers.
I don't object to Councillor Thurley's part D, but I would propose what I had as a part E, and I'm happy to put it in writing for the staff because it particularly related to built form guidelines rather than specific buildings.
So we'll have a point E and you're forwarding that to the staff. Yep. Thank you. We'll just wait for that. Question while we're waiting for that, councillor Vandervan.
Is councillor Con happy with the receives and notes rather than receives and endorses? That was the other issue.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
happy to start speaking to it while both
No problem.
motions are
Away you
combined.
go. I've got a second and Councillor Thurley, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Con?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Thurley, for your collaboration. I'm glad we've got a mutually agreeable motion in front of us. I'll be brief because we've already had a fair bit of discussion on this during the public forum tonight. It's obviously a critically important location in Albury that's much loved and appreciated by the community, and in desperate need of an upgrade at some stage. So I think it's really important and really timely that we're looking at the long-term future of the square. We've received some really well-informed and well-justified feedback about the need for specific guidelines to guide the buildings on the site, and that was the reason for my inclusion of an extra point. That being said, in discussions that councillors and staff have had with the consultants prior to this point, I think the submission actually raised really similar issues with built form to the consultants and the types of solutions that they were talking about, which you can see in the concept drawings that our consultants have drawn a new building where the courthouse is, it has additional entrances and fronts the square. So I think the sorts of guidelines that we're thinking of, we're probably all in agreement about what that probably looks like, but the detail is what's missing in terms of actually having those built form guidelines. So I'm satisfied with Mr. Christie's response that that particular detail in terms of the development control plan can go in the CBD master plan review. I just wanted to make sure that that won't get lost after our discussion tonight. If other councillors agree that that's important, then we must actually come back and address that.
Thank you. And no speakers against. Speaker for, Councillor Thurley.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to commend Taylor Cutlerley Lethlean on the plan and the work they've done so far. But this is a living document, 10 to 30 years. We don't expect it to be fixed today as what's going to happen to anything in this square. 30 years' time, one can see the entertainment centre would be perhaps way past its use-by date, but I don't want to judge that. We need, however, to consider all the opportunities for and the potential downsides of buildings around this precinct. We haven't looked, for example, at the old courthouse, and the old courthouse has some wonderful historic stuff stuck behind it that no one can really see, very few people can see, and some great opportunities. So I think that we've got a good start on our cultural precinct master plan, and I think this motion allows us to build on that. And I really do appreciate the submission tonight by Andrew Boyd Barber. I think it's well thought out, and he clearly has a lot of experience in this area. I understand he's now working in Auckland on some work in the inner city. And I think that his input was quite valuable, and I believe we've got a good start with this plan. And I'd like to see us continue the discussions with the appropriate people, whether it's Taylor Cutlerley Lethlean or not. I think in the years ahead, we may have other people involved in this project, but I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Speaking for, Councillor Glacken, no speakers against.
Thank you. I'll be very brief there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the indulgence. Mr. Boyd Barber's presentation was really inclusive and comprehensive. And it's great that we have people interested in our community, even if they are living somewhere else at the moment. It's good to have that input. We do need to start somewhere, and I think we need to progress the community, the cultural precinct master plan. And I note the comments of Mr. Barber that, Mr. Boyd Barber, that he questioned the existing entertainment centre and how would that feed into the new square. In essence, we're already working towards the redevelopment of the entertainment centre at the moment. These are things that cannot stand still. These are things that will progress, and I think Councillor Thurley referred to it as a living plan. It's a living existence within our community, and so we need to move these things on, albeit piecemeal. It's unfortunate it has to be piecemeal, but the reality is we cannot rebuild an entire square and all of those buildings all in one go. That is simply not possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. There are no further speakers for or against. Just to mirror what has been said, I think it's fantastic that This particular precinct is one of the most favourite spots for most of our community, or all of our community. And it's a one-off opportunity again to redesign the heart of our community. And I think the presentation by Andrew Boyd Barber, a former youth mayor, demonstrates a level of leadership, and he has had many presentations to this chamber and in my time as council. And I think it's fantastic that the council staff and councillors are listening and working with the community. So I look forward to the public exhibition period of 28 days and look forward to submissions and responses from our community, because you only get one go at this and we need to get it right. So thank you. Councillor Con, close debate.
No, thank you.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 13.7, submissions to Office of Local Government consultation paper on remote attendance by councillors at council meetings. Councillor Vanderman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I move the recommendations. A motion that Council A endorses the submission of attachment to the Office of Local Government consultation paper on remote attendance by councillors at council meetings to be lodged by the 3rd of May 2021, and B, adopts the procedure suggested by the Office of Local Government for attendance by councillors at meetings by audio-visual link, including that councillor requests must be made in writing to the Chief Executive Officer by 12 noon on the day of the council meeting, while the temporary amendments to the Local Government General Regulations 2005 are in force until 31 December 2021, as attached to OLG Circular 21-02 Attachment 3.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, I see you putting your green card up. Did you wish to second?
Unsurprisingly, I'd like to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, did you wish to open?
Yes, briefly, Mr. Mayor, I think that council staff have encapsulated all of the thoughts and ideas that were raised at a meeting of this council in terms of what our response would be to each of the individual points that were brought up by the Office of Local Government. And not just for our community, but we believe for the betterment of a lot of councils in New South Wales, that this will provide a lot of options, a lot more inclusivity in terms of the people that might consider standing for council. If there was these options available to attend meetings remotely, and I think that all of the responses we've made to the paper were absolutely spot on. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No speakers against. Speaker for, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Just to add a couple of points, and I concur with the councillors who have spoken already, but and thank you, Councillor Van der Ven. I think that this offers an opportunity for councillors to more broadly participate in the decisions of council, because they can continue to participate even if they're away, as we have a councillor at the moment. And it doesn't only just encourage people to stand for council, but it offers an opportunity for those who stand for council and find their personal circumstances change. And it's not uncommon for those people to continue to participate more fully in the decisions and the functions of council. And it, I think, gives the comfort to those people who are considering standing for council in the first place, that if their circumstances should change, then this is an opportunity for them to continue to participate. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Any further speakers for or against? No, just to add to this, who would have thought over 12 months ago that we would be having this discussion? And I remember our first meeting and when we were all on Zoom, and it was quite awe-inspiring, actually, for us all to be participating on this platform. And now, over 12 months later, we're having this further discussion about extension of this platform. And I think Councillor Vanderman's point is very relevant, that it allows for flexibility for anyone considering a run at council or joining council to be able to do that flexibly through where they're working, if they're off location, or if they're at home and they've got sick children, or any other reason that might present itself. And I think the Office of Local Government, in fact, has announced that they're streamlining the process for people to seek candidacy for the next election and making it more financially viable. I think it's disingenuous if they don't consider our recommendations or our endorsements, because I think, again, the staff have done a great job representing our views. And I really, really commend this motion. It's a fantastic motion. Councillor Vanderman, did you wish to close debate?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We're up to 13.8, I believe. Yep, 13.8, draft feedback and complaints management policy. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council endorses the draft feedback and complaints management policy and draft feedback and complaints management procedure. B, the draft policy and procedure be placed on public exhibition for 28 days and adopted if no submissions are received. And C, upon adoption, the documents are listed on the public policy and procedure register.
Thank you. A seconder, thanks. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, just open debate.
Just briefly, it's a fairly minor matter, but it is a matter that's been raised at our Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. And it's a significant and very important one. If people have something to say about council procedures or their treatment or whatever, then we need a very formal and very thorough policy, so that at the end of whatever the matter is, they feel that they've been properly dealt with and the matter is properly recorded. And so I support this motion entirely.
Thank you. Speaker for, Councillor Stutchbury. No speakers against? No? You pressed your button. Just a question in relation to the process. Who is going to triage the complaints that we receive and monitor the timelines appropriate to that level of that complaint once they're triaged?
Thanks for your question, Mr Mayor, and through you. That will be triaged through our team leader of customer experience, actually triages everything coming through, and they decide who will then deal with each complaint and also monitors the timeliness of that response.
So the level, I noticed in the document, there's discussion about the levels of the complaint, which determine the timelines. Will that be also done through the team leader of customer service?
Through you, that certainly is correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got Councillor Thurley. Did you wish to close debate?
Just a couple of words. I mean, we do have people have various reasons to complain about procedures, acts of council staff and so on. And we do need a very well written and very formalised document to deal properly with these matters. They can, if not done properly, end up in courts. And so this is a very important policy for the council to have.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 13.9, Community and Cultural Grant Applications, Round 2, 2020 to 2021. I don't think we've got anyone stepping out this time. Okay, thanks, Councillor Con.
Thanks. I move that Council A receives and notes the report, and B endorses the recommended 2020-2021 Community and Cultural Grant Program Round 2 allocations as follows. Murray River Fine Music 3,000, Albury Wodonga Table Tennis Association 3,000, Courage to Care New South Wales 3,000, West Albury Preschool 1,376, Hume Pistol Club 1,170, Albury Public School P&C 3,000, Burrager Gallery 2,960, Thurgoona Community Action Group 2,116, Bricks on the Border 3,000, Thurgoona Community Centre 2,100.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Very happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to open debate?
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, I think this is the third time tonight that I'm very proud to be able to support some really important initiatives in the community. I think it's really important that council continue to provide this program that offers much smaller grants than our community fund and our financial assistance program. These are often for one-off events, for new and creative ideas, for opportunities in the community that wouldn't otherwise exist, and for local, mostly volunteer-run community groups who may not have other avenues of funding available to them as well, or for events that may not be financially viable through private fees, etc. So I think this is a really important program, and I'm proud to continue to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, wish to speak for?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to say how pleased I am with this range of grants. I'm particularly pleased to see the Hume Pistol Club being supported, and I compliment the Deputy Mayor on her support for the Hume Pistol Club. Well done.
Thank you. Just before we put the motion, I'm just happy to support this motion because I too do agree that the process to apply for these grants is streamlined. It has been further streamlined in the last 4.5 years of council. The particular pot of money has been increased through this group of councillors because we identified that there was a genuine need for this process and certainly this support. But just to finish on it, for all the budget items tonight, I'd like to thank the staff and I'd like to thank the councillors. It is a up to 6-month process that we go through to put this budget together. This is the final item concerning the budget, but a lot of thought and a lot of work goes into this budget, and congratulations to Mr. Finlayson and his staff and all the councillors for their patience and forbearance on this matter. Councillor Con, did you wish to close debate?
Only briefly, Mr. Mayor. Look, the range of projects is fantastic. We've got everything from classical music to artwork and gardening. And yes, the Hume Pistol Club is in there. I have no interest in shooting a gun, and I honestly don't understand why people do. But it's obvious that there are people in this community that enjoy shooting pistols for sport. And I think doing that with targets safely at a club with support is an appropriate thing to do.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron's looking like Mr. Ed then, shaking his head a lot. Okay, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.10, display of the pride flag in the Albury City Council chamber. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move an alternate motion to the recommendation, please.
Yes.
I'd like to move that council endorses annual display of the pride flag in the council chamber during the month of June, brackets Pride Month.
Seconded, thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, did you wish to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we've had a previous debate on this already. Youth Council are very passionate about LGBTQIA+ inclusion, and they submitted a request to us to display the pride flag permanently in the council chamber. We've agreed to endorse a temporary display of the flag, which I think is appropriate, and went back to the Youth Council to ask for some suggested dates. But the reason in particular that I've moved an alternate motion is that the recommendations provided dates for this year only. And the youth councillors that I've had the privilege of meeting are not just passionate about inclusion, but about creating lasting change in the community. And having asked us for a permanent display, let's not disempower them any more than they already have been by limiting their request to literally just a one-off. I think they've suggested June as Pride Month as a really appropriate suggestion. That's an internationally recognised time to celebrate and include LGBTQIA+ people. And I strongly believe that if we're going to do that, it should be every year. Thanks.
Thank you. Just in relation to the motion, it's just a procedural issue. Do we require during the month of June commencing in 2021? Because it's
happy to add that if it's required, but I'm not sure
I'm just
how we
wondering
fly
whether
it
that
in
just
any
references
previous year.
June this year. It just seems to be a little bit closed. That's all. I'd like to be advised of any difference.
I'm happy to add commencing 2021 if you think it's ambiguous.
If we could do that, I think it then gives it that longevity and continuation. I'll just wait for that one. Thanks, ladies. You've opened debate, Councillor Con. Councillor Van der Ven, you wish to speak against?
Yeah, look, we got a motion to say that the council would be the ultimate decision maker on this, and why by changing the motion to what Councillor Con's changed it to, we have a situation now where we're committing future councils to this particular process, and I will be voting against this. And if this motion is unsuccessful, I'll be moving an alternate motion.
Thank you. Speaking for the motion, Councillor Thurley.
We're not committing anyone to anything. There's a thing called a rescission motion, which has been used many times, and any council at any time can move a motion changing this motion. So I don't have any problem with what we've got on the screen right now.
Thank you. Speaking against, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I was happy to support, very happy to support the original motion put forward by the staff. I understand the concept that Councillor Thurley is proposing, and that is that a rescission motion can be put forward or brought by councillors. In essence, a rescission motion has only a certain life. So you have to undertake a rescission motion within a certain period of time. It would have to be a completely new determination from a council. It could not rescind the decision made by us in the term of rescission. However, I do note his intention with raising that. I would prefer us to stick to the 2 dates as suggested by the staff or recommended by the staff, and very happy to support that. People will recall that I originally suggested when we spoke at the last council meeting about the Pride emblem, was that I would like us to have other organisations within our community recognised, and I think that we can offer such recognition if we do so for a meeting or 2 at a time. And so therefore I would like to go back to the original motion recommended by the staff, that it would be for those specific dates for the council meetings in June annually, the annual June council meeting or meetings, and for us to have other opportunities for other organisations. And I remind councillors such as the White Ribbon Day, the Blue Ribbon Day, the bra for breast cancer, the blue underpants for prostate cancer. There's all sorts of things that we can be doing within our community, and that's for our community, and that's recognising all of those groups within our community, not just one of the groups within our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. Speaker 4, Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 2 problems with the original recommendation. One is that it was only for this year, 2021. That's a major fault in that recommendation. And the second one was that it strikes me as churlish to put the flag up for the meeting and then hurriedly take it down again after the meeting for no particular reason. Pride Month goes for the month, so leave the flag up for the month and don't just hide it away when there's no meeting happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Speakers for questions. Councillor Cameron speaking against.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to support the original motion and have the ensign displayed during Pride Month, but the motion as proposed by Councillor Con is simply an attempt to overturn and to undermine the previous decision of council. I disagree with Councillor Thurley's position on this particular matter, because if you're creating a position or a piece of public policy that requires a rescission motion to be changed, I think you're probably not going about the consideration of the issue correctly. It's appropriate, as per the previous determination of council, the council determines when the Pride emblem is displayed, and that's indeed, once this is, I hope, defeated, I would envisage or foreshadow would move back to the original recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Question from Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to staff. Where do you envisage this emblem being displayed in the chamber?
Mr. Glass.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Our initial envisagement was on the table in the centre of the chamber.
The centre table.
Draped across the centre table.
Thank you.
Question from Councillor Thurley.
With your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, it's not a question, it's a clarification of what I originally said. I said a rescission motion, but that has limitations in that it must be done within a certain time. But a council at any stage can move a motion to change our policy. And so if a councillor wants to not do this, they can move a rescission motion the next week. And other than that, any new council can change it anytime they like.
Yeah, thank you. Speaker against, Councillor King. No speakers for.
Yes, I'm speaking against this, and I'll also be voting if it gets defeated against the other motion. I'm not for any secular group having flags here. I think where does it end? We've had a lot of groups here looking for funding and those sort of things, but do we put their flags up? Do we have Rotary Club, Lions? I think this is council chamber, and just having one particular group having it up here for a month, I don't agree with. And I think if we start that, we can't be favouring one group against another. So I'm voting against this and potentially the next motion if it gets defeated.
Thank you. A question from Councillor Vanderman for another speaker against. There are no speakers
Thanks.
for.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just, I'm not sure whether Councillor Glackham will recall this. We had an incident in council where people brought in some flags and displayed it here in the chamber to make a point about a particular item the council was discussing. And I thought at that stage that we had made a decision subsequent to that that no items would be to be displayed on this particular part of the council chambers. And I don't have a problem going on the wall, but the issue for me was around this not being allowed in terms of the that particular space there. So do any of the staff recall those particular discussions? It would happened, I think, under Councillor ex-Mayor Baker's term of council, when we had some people coming in to make some displays of annoyance, and there was effigies and other things displayed on the table. I thought council made a decision that that wasn't going to be allowed. So I'm asking, obviously this needs to be taken on notice, but I don't have an issue with the flag going on the wall, but definitely not on this on the table.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Mr. Zachnich, could we confirm or deny that take that on notice? Thanks.
Certainly, we'll take it on notice, and once we get a decision this evening, we can report back.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am not happy about the flag being emblem, not a flag, being displayed across that table right in front of that chamber. I'm happy with the 2 days on the previous original motion. I don't mind that being hung, if that's the case, on the wall at the back, but I cannot see it being hung in front of the official flags of this country. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. Any further speakers for? I think everyone's spoken except myself. So I'll wind this up by, I support this motion on the basis that we are only providing lip service to this particular issue by just providing it for two meetings a month. The issues addressing the pride flag are well documented. The previous report talked about the Youth Council being or advising council. There was also some discussion about permanent display all year round, which I might add a lot of councils in this country currently do. I think we're actually, instead of being inclusive, we're actually discriminating on this particular issue because it's 1 month of the year. And during that period of time, the semantics of where it is displayed, to me, is irrelevant. It's the fact that we display it and the fact that we stand behind what we do together. And as a community, I believe personally that the community would support this, and I do support it myself. So that is the over to you, Councillor Con, to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope that a future council would one day rescind this motion, and I hope that they would do that because LGBTQIA+ people will be fully included in society and not feel the need to have an emblem displayed to promote their inclusion. There's been lots of chatter about where to put this. I think that's distracting from the significant debate. Just sitting here without having measured, I can see space on the walls for about 10 flags. So I really don't think that we should pretend that that's the problem here. We've got plenty of room for it without it overriding or taking up space that belongs to any other flag. There's also been conflation with any other community group in town. And I think it's really important to be clear that the people that have asked us to do this are our youth council. This is a group of outstanding young people who are specifically appointed to a committee that exists to advise us on issues that are important to young people. It's not a fundraising group. It's not an out of town group. It is our own youth council that have asked us to do this. And they asked us to display the flag permanently. We agreed at the previous motion to display it temporarily. We also agreed that council would determine when that is, and this motion would do that. It would determine that when would be during Pride Month in June, which I've already spoken to being entirely appropriate. But I think it's actually a really pathetic response to our youth council. They've asked us, they've taken the trouble to make a submission on a flag protocol, which is a big undertaking for a group of teenagers. This is an issue that they are extremely passionate about, and they've asked us to display the Pride flag permanently. And we're saying we're going to put it up and down quickly on 2 days ever as a one-off and then not do it again. I think that's a really inappropriate response to a passionate group of young people, and I wouldn't be surprised if it puts them off engaging with us in future. If we're serious about supporting and including young people to be involved in politics and civic leadership and local government, then we need to take it seriously when they tell us that something's important to them. They've told us that this is important to them, and I think displaying the flag annually during June every year is a really appropriate way to respond to their feedback, and I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Con. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. Councillor Vanderven, you foreshadowed the original motion, I believe.
Yes, I'll move the motion, the recommendation of the motion. The council endorses display of the Pride flag in the council chamber during council meetings on the 15th and 28th of June 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderven, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, I'll reserve right of reply.
Thank you. There appears to be no question or further debate. Do you have a right? A speaker against? Councillor Stutchbury. Forget it. Councillor Vanderven, did you wish to close debate or have a right of reply? Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is won. Thank you. Carried, would appear. Can we commit that again? Those in favour of this motion, raise your hand, please. 5, yes. And those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, as I thought the first time. Okay, thank you. Okay, 14.1 investment balances March 2021. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives and notes the investment balances report for the month of March 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you. No.
Thank you. No further question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Monthly development statistics, March 2021. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Vanderven.
Move the motion, recommendation of the motion that council receives and notes the information on the monthly development statistics report for March 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderven, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, did you wish to speak for that particular motion?
Simply to highlight some really good numbers in the report, numbers of applications, but also the processing time is looking very good. Thank you.
Thank you. If no further questions or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 14.3 Stakeholder Engagement Plan, Reconciliation Action Plan. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Happy to move the recommendation as a motion through you that council receives and notes the draft stakeholder engagement plan for the development of the Reconciliation Action Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Vanderven, before I go back to Councillor Gluckin.
Look, the only question I have, Mr. Mayor, is again around the timelines for this process. Now, understanding that the gestation of this was back in 2007, And the last iteration, if you like, of an attempt to start this process was back in 2017. And now we have a situation where all of this is going to be done and finalised within a month of a new council being elected. And I'm just wondering whether we can't change the timelines for this to be a little further scope so that the next council, when they're elected, get a chance to have some input into this particular statement, rather than this council putting something in place that they don't have a chance to have any comment upon. So that's the question in terms of the timing of this, in terms of us finishing our term on the basically the 4th of August, 1 month before the thing, and we're deciding this in the last council meeting in July.
Thank you, Ms. Goad.
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. The timeline, if council wanted to delay the timeline, that is within council's remit and council can decide that. Certainly we've employed KPMG, who are very experienced, who've worked on the Albury regional deals in the Aboriginal sector. So they've got the experience. We have established all of the relationships. We've got the working groups ready. We can continue to proceed. The only thing that might hold us up is Reconciliation Australia will need to approve our Reconciliation Action Plan. We can't guarantee how long that will take, but if council wanted to delay that, we can certainly work with you and change those timelines. It is in your hands.
Councillor Van.
You got any suggestions, Mr. Mayor, in terms of this? Are you happy for this to proceed the way it's timelined, or do you want to sort of put a delay factor in there? I mean, we don't know when Reconciliation Australia, how long they're going to take to look at this particular action plan. But I would have thought that if we were to extend the period where they come back to us by a couple of months, that might offer us an opportunity to get this decision for the next council. I don't have an issue with what we're trying to do. It's something that it's been on the table now for 14 of the 17 years that I've been on council. But just in terms of hurrying it, it appears that it's just the timing just seems to be wrong to me.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Ms. Code, my understanding was the work that has already been done under the regional deal has really progressed this particular item quite significantly, and the timelines that are, and I actually looked at the timelines and thought they were very, very tight, but having consideration of the regional deal and the work that's already been done by the consultant would give me confidence that they would get it done. But I think Councillor Vanderman has a fair point that Reconciliation Australia may drag the chain and may not, that overlap may not occur. Look, I'm happy to be guided in relation to that particular extension of the timelines, or whether we have a gap or a succession of whether it can be delivered early or it can't be delivered. It goes to the furthest date. So a window of opportunity. Ms. Squire.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a suggestion. Once the Reconciliation Action Plan is drafted, it will need to come back to council. There are still those conversations to occur with the community. So yes, we've certainly talked a lot already. But my suggestion would be we worked through the process of developing the draft. When that comes back to council, depending on the content of that draft, council may choose to exhibit it for a longer period of time, or it may choose to defer exhibition until such time as it feels is the right time to do that. That would allow us to continue to progress with the project, to move forward with the community on that journey, and then we can bring that draft report back to the council for further discussion and consideration.
But it still doesn't give any forbearance to what Reconciliation Australia see as the final result is the timeline issue that we're discussing, does it? I think all it does is...
However, Mr. Mayor, I would expect that draft reconciliation action plan will need to come to council before it's deferred or referred on to Reconciliation Australia.
Which will be still locked into those timelines, so it won't change the outcome for Reconciliation Australia that we have concerns about. So, Councillor Glacken, yes.
If I may, I would like to open debate because
Yep.
I would like to discuss a number of factors pertaining to
sure.
the timing. And thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate Councillor Van der Ven's concerns and those that have been confirmed as concerns to Councillor Mack as well. My suggestion is that we would move forward with this. Council cannot stand still. There are always things that are moving forward and we need to progress each and every one of them, including this area. This plan needs some time to be enacted. It does need to go to the Reconciliation Australia organisation. They may take some time to get back to us. So it may well be the concern that Councillor Van der Ven has about the new council having an opportunity to take this on themselves may well happen, because noting that the Reconciliation Australia may take some time to get back to us, I think is an opportunity that we should utilise for the betterment. Should they come back quickly, then perhaps we can progress this matter. And again, as Councillor Thurley suggested previously tonight, the new council can reverse things if they wish to. But I would suggest, noting the timeline proposed, the fact that there is an external federal organisation that we need to be working with as well, that the timing may well work out that we have the drafts working forward, the community work continuing as it has already begun. And I would be disappointed if we had to stall that community consultation and work already undertaken. We should be gaining the benefit from that work already commenced and then allowing the timeline to play out. I would anticipate that it will be a final decision made by the new council. And I ask councillors to support us in moving this forward. It needs to be moved forward. Thank you.
Thank you. No speakers against. Speaker for, Councillor Thurley.
Just reiterate, Councillor Van der Ven has raised the point that it's been a hell of a long time so far. So let's demonstrate our commitment, get on with the work and get the plan developed. Then it has to go to be approved. And I'm sure Councillor Glacken's correct. By the time they do that, it'll be a new council here anyway. But let's show our commitment to this plan and get on with it.
Thank you. No further questions or debate. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to close debate?
No, thank you for the support, Councillor Thurley. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. No delegates' reports for noting. Councillor Doxey, you have an item for urgent business.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to reflect on the fact that Anzac Day yesterday was a great success in Albury. I want to thank the CEO and his staff in particular. They were across the issue and they supported us first class in relation to the COVID exercise we had to go through. And could you please pass on the thanks of the City of Albury RSL. Over the last couple of days, the site, the Albury War Memorial, has been very, very heavily visited. And again, I thank the staff for their commitment late last year in refurbishing that memorial. I was up there again today, and the number of cars that go up there both day and night is certainly well worth the effort, and it certainly gave us the most visited site in Albury. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. I'd just like to share your thoughts and reiterate that the ceremony yesterday, all day, it was a wonderful effort by the Albury RSL in collaboration with Albury City, the volunteers from the SCS and the VRA, and all of the community that came to the march, and certainly to all the ceremonies. But it was because it was probably the first time we've had the opportunity to share the new development up there. It took your breath away on the day. It was a beautiful day, but I think, again, credit goes to the people that work really hard to put that particular event on every year. And when we don't have it, we certainly do miss it. And I feel very sorry for a lot of the people in Victoria that didn't have that opportunity. But again, I reiterate my congratulations to all those involved. So thanks, Councillor Doxey, for bringing that into the chamber. Okay, there are no... Councillor Doxey, Councillor Thurley, did you have something? You've got a startled look on your face. Okay, no, well, that's there are no other items, there are no confidential items. Happy to close the meeting at 7:44. Thank you, councillors.